Hey guys, welcome to a Tuesday bonus video. In this video we're going to check out the LGA 2011 platform for the very first time. We're testing a brand new motherboard. This is a Xeon X79ZD3. It's a micro ADX motherboard and also a 10-core processor. So this is the Xeon E5 2650L-V2. So recently, Brian from Tech Yes City, he did a video on a $22 6-core processor, and that's the whole reason why I went out and I bought a ton of parts, all up 4 motherboards, a ton of CPUs and RAM, and this is the first video where we're gonna kick off our investigation in Socket 2011, but also 1356. So both platforms are the successor to the 1366 platform. And this is really interesting. Out of China, they're making brand new motherboards, likely because they've got a lot of spare RAM and processors to sell. And I've been brushing up on my Russian and my Portuguese. In those markets, buying new is not the easiest option. Prices are either inflated or maybe they might be high because of tariffs and import taxes. And those markets, they do a ton of videos using these platforms. So I thought, hey, why not also check this out, introduce this to you guys, and we will find out if this is actually worth going for, or are there better options buying new. In the background, we have Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This is the demo version. I'm using a RX 580 with 8 GB of RAM, and that game is still very demanding for modern graphics cards, so I'm playing it at 720p with high details. I do that because I want to put more stress on the processor, and this game is really made for many threads and cores. It runs really well, but not every game does, so do stick around to the end. We will have a look at some other games where this processor might not be ideal. So I ordered a lot of parts from eBay and AliExpress. Most of them haven't arrived yet, but what I usually also do is get in touch with a few companies that we worked with in the past, and one seller from AliExpress, he basically was okay with working with us, and he sent us this motherboard and the processor. Now, working with AliExpress, it can always be a little bit sketchy. They like playing games with the prices. At the time of me agreeing to testing these parts, the motherboard sold for 94 US, 138 Aussie, and the processor sold for 50 US and 72 Aussie. And you should not be paying much more than that, to be honest, because for us in the Western world, you can just get a B320, B350 Ryzen motherboard together with an R5 1600 or 2600 and some DDR4 RAM. Prices have come down, and you will get something that runs circles basically around a system like this. So I call this premium budget, so to speak, but you have to keep an eye out on prices. We will touch on that with the processors especially. You can quickly spend too much, but you have to be aware this is tech that's like 6-7 years old. The processor at least is 6 years old. So there's only so much we can do. So in the box, we're getting the motherboard. We're also getting an I/O shield. There's a driver CD, and there are some drivers for some older operating systems, including Windows XP. So that could be interesting for some retro gaming. We're getting 2 SATA cables, and we're getting this fan adapter. For a while I was curious why these fan adapters seem to be included with these Chinese motherboards, and this is an adapter for AMD coolers, and that worked in really handy because that allowed me to use a Deepcool Gamma Archer CPU cooler. So that's actually a really handy addition. So very likely you don't even have to buy a new CPU cooler, despite this being a LGA 2011 motherboard. There's also a little booklet. It's all in Chinese, but there's some diagrams showing you where all the ports are. So that is actually quite useful. This is a micro ADX motherboard with proper size and all the mounting holes. The reason I mentioned is a lot of these Chinese motherboards, they are often in between sizes. You pick up a motherboard and it appears to be a full ATX motherboard, but then it's a little bit too short and the last mounting holes, they don't line up. But this is a proper sized micro ADX motherboard. So if you're looking for building a compact machine with lots of cores and threads, then this motherboard might be of interest to you. So in terms of motherboard layout, they've done a pretty good job. The power connectors are where they should be for clean cable management, and these SATA ports here are angled, for example, so there's no issue with a long graphics card. We have USB 3, the ports at the back, but there's also a USB 3 header. We've got additional USB 2 headers here. There are also headers for serial port and audio. And the front panel header has the standard layout like you find on an Asus motherboard. We have 4 RAM slots, and this platform does support quad channel memory. We will talk about that in more detail later. We have 2 PCI Express 1X and one 16X slot. The standard is PCI Express 3.0. I tested that with my graphics card. We have quite a few fan headers. Here's the one for the processor. It does support PWM. You can go into the BIOS and change the speed of your fan. There's another header over here, and there's one more down there. Because of shipping regulations, it does not come with a coin battery, so you have to source your own. There's a CMOS clear jumper here to wipe the settings in the BIOS, and also a very unique PC post sound when you turn on the computer. We have 2 M.2 slots, so I tested my 240GB SSD and that worked fine, and yep, you can install Windows 10 onto it and boot from it. That is fully supported. I wasn't able to test both at the same time because I only have one SSD, but I did try both slots and we're getting fairly decent performance. We have 6 SATA ports, but only the green one is SATA 3. The other 5 are only SATA 2. One thing I noticed with the M.2 slots is that the hard drive activity LED does not work. Only works with the SATA ports. So if you're using a SATA SSD connected to the SATA ports, the hard drive activity LED will work, but not with M.2. And here we have all the ports in the back: 2 PS2, 2 USB 3, 6 USB 2, gigabit Ethernet, and 7.1 audio. They also make a big deal out of this LED line, but it's not what you expect, like what you find on an Asus motherboard, for example, where the line is actually lit up by LEDs on the top. On this motherboard, the LEDs are at the bottom of the motherboard, so the effect is, not what you expect. And here we have the CPU socket. It's quite a bit larger than what we usually work with on the channel. And there are a wide range of processors. Basically, you have a choice between the older Sandy Bridge and the newer Ivy Bridge processors. I recommend you go with the Ivy Bridge CPUs. So these are all from the E5 2600 series with a V2 at the end. The V2, those are Ivy Bridge. So instead of 32 nanometer, they are 22 nanometers. So they run cooler. They come with higher clock speeds. Also more cores are available, larger cache sizes. So all around, they are the better processors, but the prices will always be a little bit higher. So the processor we're working with today is the E5 2650L. So L stands for low voltage. We have 10 cores, 20 threads. Unfortunately, the clock speed is quite low. So we've got a base clock of 1700 megahertz, and turbo boost, it does depend a little bit on the load. In games, it will run at 1900 megahertz. This is basically the all-core turbo. So let's have a look at some benchmarks. In Cinebench R15, we're getting 834, and in R20, we're getting 1769. 3D Mark, they also love multiple threads. So we've got 22,867 for CloudGate, 26,814 for Skydiver, and 10,174 for Firestrike. I also noticed in Device Manager there was a missing driver for one of the storage components. Windows Update couldn't find anything, so I used the Snappy driver installer, and that picked up the correct driver. So coming back to Shadow of the Tomb Raider, this game seems to be really geared towards a platform like this. I was really worried that the low clock speed of 1.9 gigahertz is gonna be an issue with games, but this game works really well. Most of the time it hovers around the 100 FPS and is silky smooth, and we're getting good frame times as well. Even in the tough spots, there's a scene in the village, for example, where in past videos where we used budget parts, it totally tanks, but here it occasionally dips below. So that was really impressive to see. Hitman 2 is another game that seems to work really well with this platform. So once again, I'll put the MSI Afterburner overlay on the screen. You can see all the cores and threads in action. And once again, sometimes there are some scenes where the FPS goes down a little bit, but it's only for a few moments. And yeah, another game that seems to be well optimized to take advantage of multiple threads. But then I tried some games from Ubisoft, and here things don't look that great. So for example, I tried Far Cry 5, and yeah, performance is not that great. We're not hitting 60 FPS at all, and the frame times are always a little bit all over the place. It's quite stuttery. So this game seems to need less cores with faster IPC, higher clock speed. So this processor, unfortunately, not a good match for Ubisoft games. I tried a few other games like Assassin's Creed, and I saw similar issues with games from Ubisoft. I also had a look at hyperthreading. With a 10-core processor, do you even need hyperthreading? And at least in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the game performs better with hyperthreading turned off. So I ran some benchmarks, and it was noticeable, around 4 FPS in the benchmark in the overall score. So yeah, after that I turned off hyperthreading, and yeah, I saw really no negative impact in any of the games. Even in Hitman 2, I haven't done any formal testing because there's no benchmark mode built in, but just playing the game, it seems to be a little bit faster with hyperthreading turned off. I also had a look at power consumption, especially idle sitting at the desktop. 70 watts is what the power meter showed, and that's quite a bit more compared to what I usually see with Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge machines. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Now, under load, around 130 watts, stressing the processor, and around 200 and something with the GPU in full load. I also had a look at the VRMs, and yeah, this processor, the one I'm using, is an L version, low voltage, so has a 70 watt TDP. So yeah, it didn't even get lukewarm. So I saw no issues with the VRMs. I really need a much more power hungry processor to give those VRMs a good workout and properly judge the capabilities of this motherboard if you are into overclocking, or you want to consider getting a 130 or 150 watt TDP processor with this motherboard. A real highlight of the 2011 platform is the quad channel memory. So that means even out of old DDR3 modules, you're getting more performance. So to give an example, I'm using 4 4GB sticks. These are 1600 megahertz. And because of the quad channel, they've got the same memory bandwidth as a DDR4 3200 dual channel platform. So you're basically on par with the Ryzen platform. However, DDR3 has a lower latency. We've got CL9. So you will actually end up with a faster memory subsystem compared to a modern Ryzen platform. And I ran a benchmark in IDA 64, and we can see it's ahead of the Ryzen 2700X. The second benefit is that this platform supports registered ECC memory. Now, this means you have access to cheaper RAM. So you can use regular DDR3 RAM. So if you already have a ton of sticks lying around, you can just use those. But if you need to buy some more RAM, you can get registered ECC memory. And the main advantage here is that you're getting lower prices. Just some rough prices. If you're looking at 4 4GB modules, you're looking at 31 US, 45 Aussie. And if you're interested in 4 8GB modules, you're looking at 65 US and 94 Aussie. Buying RAM from China is also a little bit sketchy. I've noticed that most of these memory modules, they reprogram the SPD information. You can, for example, in this kit, the memory modules, the chips actually have different numbers, and also the green, the color, the tint is a little bit different. Yet, if you access the SPD information, surprise, surprise, they're identical from the exact same week even, yeah. So there's definitely some funny business going on. If you want to buy legit RAM, just have a look locally. There are lots of IT recyclers that work with used server parts and make them an offer. I found that usually they're priced a lot higher, but you can just lowball them half the price, and often they come back with a fairly decent price. I had a thorough look into the BIOS and it all looks very generic, and you will come across the same sort of BIOS with pretty much all of these Chinese motherboards. So no overclocking was possible. You could, however, force the memory speed. So seeing this is quad channel, using 1333 with lower CL9, for example, compared to a CL11 on 1600 megahertz might actually give you a smooth experience, but I haven't done any detailed testing in that regard. And all the other options are fairly standard stuff. For example, you can set the controllers to ID if you wish, and you can change the boot order and so on. And there's also a boot override, which is handy if you want to install Windows 10 from the USB flash drive. So first of all, I had a lot of fun with this platform. So this is really new, LGA 2011, I have no experience. So that's why I also don't want to do too many tests. I'll save that up for some future videos, because I definitely want to get your input. What are the things that you want me to look into? And I will then respond in future videos. And as I said, I've got a ton of stuff coming in. I'm waiting for 2 more motherboards, and also quite a range of processors that I think will be better suited for gaming compared to what we looked at here. So yeah, this processor does have a lot of cores and threads, but the clock speed is so low that in unoptimized games or in games that just prefer high IPC, then the performance will suffer. But we also saw that more modern games, especially those using DirectX 12 and the Vulkan API, they seem to really benefit from having multiple cores. Hitman II and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, they work really well. And it kind of mirrors what's going on with the consoles. They've got fairly low IPC processors, but they do have 8 cores. So I think that's where things are heading. And I believe the days of buying a quad-core processor, even for budget or premium budget, might be over with Ryzen, with the Ryzen chips setting the trend for more cores, and now Intel also following suit. The i5 is now a 6-core processor. This platform could be quite interesting, but yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I will definitely respond with future reviews. With the prices, the Ryzen platform also puts a lid on how much you should be spending on such a platform. So you can get a B320 or 350 motherboard, 16 gig of DDR4 memory, and on Ryzen 5 1600 or 2600. Price that up in your region and then see how much such a LGA 2011 platform costs, and then you have to decide for yourself if it's worth it. So for the motherboard, around 90 US, 140, 45, 50 Aussie is the maximum I would spend. Beyond that, it really makes no sense. You're better off just going for a Ryzen system. And with the CPUs, the situation is a little bit better. So for example, if we go for a 2640 V2, you're looking at 42 US, 61 Aussie. And if you're looking for 2650 V2, you're looking at 62 US, 91 Aussie. So the prices with the processors are a little bit better. But do remember, if you're buying a brand new Ryzen 5 2600, it will run circles around this platform. You get much higher clock speed, and you're also getting more modern features like USB ports beyond just USB 3. And of course, buying brand new, you get a solid BIOS, everything works, you get warranty and all of that. So yeah, basically apply common sense when shopping around. But if you have any specific questions about this platform and what sort of tests we should be doing in future videos, and I plan to do a lot of videos, I'm really excited about this stuff. It's my first time getting my hands on parts that have more than 4 cores, so that's really exciting. So yeah, let me know what is it that you want to see, and I will do my best and make it happen. I will see you next week with our Friday video, but do keep an eye out for Tuesday. Sometimes there will be a bonus video. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Give it a like and click on that notification bell. And I shall see you soon with another one.